Hello everybody, welcome back to the Collector's Vault. Today, Mike's not here, but instead, Dr. Stupid is here. And yes, I am a doctor, my degree's right there. So today, Dr. Stupid would love to talk to you guys about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and all these controversies around it, all the, well, I guess the hype around it, and all the negative reactions, kind of like the negative hype around it. And people are kind of wondering if this game's going to flop, if Pokemon itself is just going to flop because of all the negative feedback from this new game coming out. As many of you probably did see that at E3, which was E3 2019, which happened about like a month ago. I know I'm a little late to the party on this one. They did reveal more information on the Pokemon Sword and Shield game. They revealed some of the, I think they did reveal like a few Pokemon. They revealed some of the gameplay, like, you know, just kind of showing you how, yes, you can actually roam around in the world in 3D. You can move the camera, which is really cool. They did confirm kind of like just more information on the whole Dynamax thing of how you can make one Pokemon giant. All the gym leaders have at least one giant Pokemon, one Dynamax Pokemon. They revealed how in the wild there's going to be, you know, wild encounters, as well as you being able to see the Pokemon wandering around in the fields, or in I think it's called in the wild zone, or the wild area, I forget what it's called. But, you know, which I think is pretty good. They brought that back from the Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. And so far, the two things that are getting people really upset are the graphics and the Dexit controversy. Now, I'm just going to start right now with graphics, and because Dexit is definitely more of a controversial topic. So, apparently, people do believe that this is going to be a bit of a disappointment graphics-wise. This is the first Pokemon game to be on a home console, the home console slash portable, you know, it's, you know, the Switch is a hybrid, but it's obviously the most powerful piece of hardware that Pokemon game's been on. The most recent one was the 3DS, which, you know, finally introduced us with X and Y, giving us, like, you know, 3D graphics. We can see all of our battles in 3D. Our characters are actually like 3D models roaming around in this 3D world. You know, and that was obviously a big leap forward. And then we had Sun and Moon, basically expanding upon that with better graphics, better textures, just more Pokemon in general. I know Sun and Moon, personally for me, wasn't I didn't get Sun and Moon. I didn't really like the whole change of, you know, there being like no gyms and there being trials and all that stuff. It just wasn't for me. I didn't like some of the starters either. I wasn't a big fan of just some of the new Pokemon. And now with Pokemon Sword and Shield coming out on the Switch, people were expecting this game to really, you know, push Pokemon to the next level as far as graphical appearance. And I'm not gonna lie, I think the same thing for that. There's a lot of hate right now regarding the graphics of the game. Most notably, you'll keep seeing this, and it was actually really funny, is they were showing you some of the wild area where you, as the main character, are walking around in the field, all the Pokemon are around you, and there's a snapshot of one of the trees in the wild area. And I'll admit, this tree does look pretty, like, low poly count. It just looks low res. It looks like it's not very detailed. But graphically, yeah, it's pretty bad. But it's just one tree out of the rest of the game. I know, like, even, like, some of the grassy areas didn't look very nice. But people are basically flipping out, saying, like, how can the game look this bad? People are actually making me laugh really hard, because they're actually they're pasting Link from Ocarina of Time on that snapshot with the tree. And the captions are just saying, oh man, I can't wait for Ocarina of Time to come out. And it's really funny because graphically the tree looks like it would fit perfectly in Ocarina of Time. And, which I can see why people were upset about that, because it is kind of like, that one tree is not very impressive graphically wise. But there are other instances where, like, the graphics just don't really seem to be very impressive. It kind of makes you think like they took, like, graphics from the 3DS game and they just kind of, like, up-res them a little bit. That's why they don't look very impressive. But we saw from other demonstrations that some of the cities look really beautiful. There was, like, some shots of, like, I guess, like, your character's house. Like, other graphics look pretty good for Game Freak design. And I think you have to realize this is Game Freak's artistic style. So obviously, even like the characters themselves don't look very realistic, because, you know, they're Game Freak characters, they're Pokemon characters, so they're supposed to have a certain look to them. And I think they definitely accomplished that, and they just, you know, now you have like proper like lip movements. I don't know if they're actually going to make a match, if they're going to make the lip syncing match, like, you know, the language that the game's for, like English, or like, you know, what the European language is. They definitely are showing that the game is going to look really pretty. All the Pokemon have been up-res to look really nice, and they, like, I think personally the game is going to look just fine. And one of the biggest things that people are forgetting is that the game is still about 6 months out, or like 4 to 5 months out. So when they first revealed some of this footage, you have to realize that this might have been footage that they compiled from months ago, maybe even from last year. There's no telling that of how much they've improved the game since then. So even though the game, like the game footage that was revealed back in like in May during the Nintendo Direct, or in June during the E3, there's no telling that that's actually what the game currently looks like. That could have just been the demo that they made. I do think that when the game comes out finally, or as we get closer to the release date, we're gonna get some better. We're obviously gonna get more Pokemon for one thing. I think people have to realize, like, you know, we still don't even know. We only got like 7 Pokemon revealed. So there's a whole bunch of new Pokemon to get revealed, which are really going to get people hyped up when they see some of the new creatures. And I'm pretty sure the game's going to look a lot better closer to launch, and I'm sure once it does launch, it's going to look beautiful. Number 2, and this is probably the biggest controversial problem with Pokemon Sword and Shield, is the Dexit controversy. And the Dexit controversy is basically revolving around the Pokemon, the Pokedex for the game, or there being a lack of a national Pokedex. And the National Pokedex is just basically you having the capability of having any Pokemon ever, any Pokemon that's ever existed in the game itself. We saw, like with Pokemon, like personally for me, in Pokemon X and Y, you obviously start off the game and there's all the new Pokemon that you can get, and they have a lot of all of the other generation 1 through 5 in the game, but not every single Pokemon, I think when X and Y came out, they probably had over 700 Pokemon, roughly. And technically, you can have any one of those Pokemon in the game, whether you trade for one, or the Wonder Trade thing, or at some point you can get them in the game, I don't really know. But the point is, you can have any Pokemon you want in the game. So that way, competitively, you can have any team that you want to have that, so that's kind of what people like about Pokemon. And because every game up until then, please correct me if I'm wrong, but every game up until that did have a national Pokedex. When, after you beat the game, you beat the Elite Four and you beat any, post-game content, you basically unlock the ability to just, you get access to any Pokemon you get access to any Pokemon you want. But during E3, the Game Freak producers, or excuse me, I don't remember all their names, but Game Freak, the Pokemon company, revealed that there is going to be no national Pokedex. I think they did probably reveal that there are going to be approximately 600 Pokemon in the game, which is a fair amount. It's basically close to the amount of Pokemon that X and Y had, including the National Pokedex. So the Pokedex for this game, we don't know which Pokemon are not going to be in the game, but that's where people are getting nervous, because that means that from a competitive scene, because people do play the Pokemon games competitively, they won't be able to get any team that they want. They won't be able to make it their team if that one Pokemon of theirs just so happens to not be in the National Pokedex. Now, me personally, I don't really play the games competitively. I just like having fun. I like making the team the way I would like to make it. Again, when the last time I played X and Y, I had a lot of fun making the teams that I wanted with some of the newer Pokemon. And that's kind of what I think the whole National Dex thing is, I can definitely understand why people were upset, because people, they were used to having this for every game up until this point, and now with this being, supposedly the greatest Pokemon game ever created on Nintendo's most powerful hardware, it's but now you can't have any Pokemon in the game. And Game Freak has tried to defend this. They tried to defend it, saying that it's basically just a matter of them not being able to fit all of the... I should say not being able to fit all the Pokemon in the game. It's more I think it was like a time issue. Because not only are they designing, they're probably going to have at least 100 new Pokemon from Sword and Shield being put into the game. So all these Pokemon have to get their new models. They have to get all their animations done, all the rendering to make them look nice. All the polishing. But then technically, they do have all of these other models, because if Sun and Moon had a national Pokedex with every Pokemon in the game, then technically Game Freak and the Pokemon Company do have all of these models somewhere in their databases. They have all of the models for all the Pokemon, just with their 3DS graphics. So all they really have to do is just take those models and up-res them and upscale them. So that way, they're not really starting from scratch. They're just taking what they already have and polishing them up. So that's making a lot of the Pokemon fans really upset, and they think that Game Freak's being lazy, because, well, if you already have all these assets, why haven't you been doing this for years? Why did if you were anticipating that the next game is going to be on the Nintendo Switch, on a home console, why weren't you the fans are wondering, why hasn't the Pokemon Company been updating these models from the get-go? with Game Freak basically making the excuse that they just didn't have the time and the resources to do this, which, I'm not a game developer. I really don't know how difficult it is to make those changes. And on top of them making a whole different game and designing new Pokemon and everything, maybe it is too time consuming. And unlike a lot of other game franchises, this is something that I never personally thought of, but it actually makes a lot of sense. People said that, people were making arguments, well, then just delay the game. I mean, people will be upset if the game gets delayed, but obviously, we all know that if you delay the game, it just gives you more opportunity and more time to make the game perfect. But Pokemon is a franchise that you just can't delay the game and expect people to expect there to not be any controversy or any problems. And again, this was taught to me that, they released this game to coincide with the new Pokemon trading cards, the new Pokemon anime. There's a lot riding on this game coming out in November. At least I think it's November of this year. So basically, if they were to delay this game, they're going to potentially ruin all of the scheduling for all the other Pokemon, all the other parts of the Pokemon franchise. They can't really, they don't want to release the new Pokemon cards and the new anime when no one has the game alongside to play it, and that way they get to learn all these new Pokemon. It actually makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see that. It's just not an option. I think some people were saying, oh, it's impossible. I mean, it's clearly possible for them to do that. If they really wanted to, they could just delay the game. People will be upset, but you know what? If necessary, they could do that. But I can definitely see that it's not very probable, because they do want to make sure that they follow their schedule. It's from a marketing standpoint, it makes sense that they have all this, predetermined. They have everything. They have a schedule that they want to release these on. So unfortunately, with a delay not being with the delay being very unlikely, they only have several more months to get this game ready. And people are obviously upset. People are nervous. People are anxious and very nervous that the game's not going to be done in time. Or at least they think that the game's going to be done in time, but the game's not going to be perfect because there's no national Dex, and then they think the graphics are terrible. They think the game's just... and I guess also to the graphics, people were upset about there not being any improvements on the animations of the Pokemon attacks. There was a big controversy where they were actually making comparisons from the 3DS games, from X and Y, Sun and Moon, and now to Sword and Shield. The attack animations for a lot of Pokemon have been the same, which I understand that yes, there are some attack patterns and even the animations it's the animations of the Pokemon making the attack, and then there's the actually attack itself, the animation of the attack. I think one of the biggest examples was the double kick attack, where it looks exactly the same as the 3DS games. And people were outraged that Game Freak is lazy for not improving this. And obviously Game Freak, I think, tried to justify that it's not, there are improvements in the game animation-wise. They actually have different idle animations for certain Pokemon. They are obviously making improvements, but I think they can't really reveal everything and prove that they have all these improvements coming along. They can't prove that they have all these graphical improvements made in the game yet. But I'm sure we're going to see them as it gets closer to the release date. So I think a lot of Pokemon fans just have to take a chill over right now. I mean, I definitely understand their frustration. I definitely don't want the game to flop. I want the game to be, I want the game to be successful, which I know it will. It's Pokemon. I think even if everything that I said is actually true, and Game Freak is being lazy, and the game's not going to be as polished as we want it to be, people are still going to buy it. People are still because deep down, people still love Pokemon. Those fans are going to be there, and they're going to buy the game. Now, unless the game actually turns out to be a polished turd, then that's a whole different story. But I don't think it's going to be anything on that level. Because we have seen a lot of broken games being released over the years we have a lot of, Fallout 76, Anthem, they're all great examples of games that have just been apparently... Now, I personally haven't played them, but I've heard a lot of bad stories of just how poorly done and poorly designed, how broken the games are, there's bugs, the games are unfinished with missing content. And then they charge, and companies like EA and Bethesda charge full price. And finally, people were starting to let them know that, hey, we're not happy with this. So I think we're seeing something very similar with the Pokemon fans, against the Pokemon company. But I think you have to understand that there's still plenty of time for them to make some changes. Again, we technically don't even know if what we saw at E3 is currently what the current state of the game is. I personally think that they're way far ahead of that. I think the game's going to look a lot better. And you have to remember, like, games like Super Mario Odyssey is a beautiful looking game for the Nintendo Switch. If you actually look at some of the earlier trailers and then compare it to the current trailers that we got, or, you know, the trailers that, like, upon the game's release, the game did look a lot better. It was better resolution, better graphics, just more details. So there will be improvements being made up until the game's release. So regardless of the game's graphics, regardless of the whole Dexit controversy, I do think people just have to take a chill pill and just wait and see what happens. Because right now, you're not really helping Game Freak by causing this uprising and trying to act like, you know, we should boycott Pokemon for this reason. Like no, that's not helping anything. Now, I think, yeah, we should just wait and see till after the game releases, and if the game really is that bad, then, yes, we have to let the Pokemon Company and Nintendo know that this is not acceptable. This is, especially not for Pokemon. It's one of Nintendo, and it's one of the biggest IPs of all time. It's one of the biggest IPs on the planet right now. So, and obviously, again, the success of this game, as I mentioned, is obviously going to affect the trading card game. It's going to affect potentially vintage Pokemon cards, which would affect me more than the actual current trading card game. I don't really care about that. And it's obviously going to affect the success of the TV show too. People, like, they have a lot riding on this, so I personally don't think they're going to screw it up. And so far, although some of the past Pokemon games, I never played Black and White, and I didn't play Sun and Moon, and I heard Black and White was, like, okay. I thought the game did look very good. I think the Diamond and Pearl had a lot of issues. Like, the games are never going to be perfect, but the games are still fun. So there is a lot of polishing to them. There's a lot of charm, and they're a lot of fun. And I don't really see that being any different for Sword and Shield. So that's Dr. Stupid's little talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield. Again, I think us fans just have to wait and see what happens. I'm sure we're going to get another Nintendo Direct before the game releases, and I'm sure it's all going to blow our minds when we start seeing all of the Pokemon that are being created. I'm sure they'll make some that are just going to make us want to play the game so bad. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope to see you guys next time. So, take it easy.